Hey everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of MarkTalks. Now, on this episode, we're actually going to talk about Beauty and the Beast. Now, because I don't feel like getting sued by the Mouse House, I can't actually show any footage from any of the movies. Apparently, I hear Goofy went to Harvard Law, and he's pretty good, so I ain't going down that path. But that's okay, because actually what we're going to be talking about is the history and the difference between Beauty and the Beast as we know them in modern day and the real history behind Beauty and the Beast, or as it's actually called, La Belle et la Bête, which is French for, as you guessed it, Beauty and the Beast. But actually, the history behind it and behind the author herself, and it was written by a woman in the 1700s, is extremely interesting and goes into not only the story and you know how it was told and the reason it was told the way it was, but the political views and the social views of the time and the social commentary it provides, which is extremely interesting, and really how Disney did exactly the opposite of what the author originally intended the story to be. So stick around and we're going to go over at I don't know. Beauty and the Beast.
Welcome to Mark Talks, where Mark does what he's best at, talking.
Hey everyone. Okay, so most people already know the story about the Beauty and the Beast. What most people do not know is the history and the story behind the author. Now, I'm going to say the author's name, but first off, she's a French woman, and yes, she was a woman, and she wrote the story in 1740. But I have to say, I am not French, okay? I speak basically three languages. German, Deutsch, English, and bad English. Okay, so you are going to have to forgive me if I'm going to absolutely destroy this name, and any French people watching out there, please do not come stab me in the heart with a spoon. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just letting you know up front. So the author's name is Gabriella Susanna Barbeau de Villeneuve. Yeah, so for the rest of this video, we are going to call her Gabby, because nobody want to hear me destroy that name for the rest of this thing. Okay, so in 1740, as I said, she wrote the story, the original story of Beauty and the Beast, not the one that you're familiar with. Now, to understand the differences, to understand why they were different, you know, what we see now in modern times and the way she originally wrote it, we actually have to delve into her past. We have to look at the way she was raised. So, in 1695 in Paris, Gabby was born into an aristocratic family. Now, that sounds all well and good, and it is, but just 11 years later, she was married off to a guy by the name of, and again, it's a French name, I'm going to destroy these things, Jean-Baptiste Gaulon de Villeneuve. Okay, yeah, so let's call him John from now on. And you have to remember at this time that even though she was born into aristocracy and nobility, this is very much the time frame of King Louis and the Tudors, and it's a time where women don't really have any rights. Honestly, they really didn't have the right to do anything. They were educated. You know, women, they really didn't get degrees the way that we think of them now, but they did have formal education, obviously, you know, things like that. But they had no rights when it came to basically marriage or anything else. They had no right to property. They had no right to ownership. They had no right to, you know, divorce a man or even decide who they married. And that is the time frame that Gabby was born into, and that's how her life was. So, okay, she was married to John in 1706 at 11 years old. Now, within 6 months of them being married, she actually filed a separation of belongings, or tried to. The thing is, Jean was horrible with money. He went through both of their inheritances. He went through all of their stuff. And there was really nothing that Gabby could do about it. A woman has no right to a divorce, so she was stuck. Jean-Baptiste didn't want to get divorced. Too bad on her. Nothing she could do about it. Now, in 1711, Gabriella was actually widowed. Her husband died. She basically was penniless. She basically had nothing because Jean, and not Jean-Luc Picard, of course, because he wouldn't do that, but Jean-Baptiste would. But Jean basically squandered everything, left her with nothing, and she was penniless. So at that time, she ended up having to move back to Paris, where she was originally born. And she ended up hooking up with a guy by the name of, I'm going to absolutely destroy this. So his name was Crébillon Perry. Perry? Let's call him Perry, okay? So Gabby and Perry ended up kind of hooking up together in the 1730s. He was actually a very well-known playwright at the time. He was one of the largest ones in the country. So anyways, after hooking up with him and, basically them living together for a very long time, up until her death, actually, that's when she got into writing. That's when she started writing all her fairy tales, all her poems, and she wrote a great many. Now, around 1740, when she published it, it was actually a tale not only about her life, but about societal norms at the time and really pushing back against those. A lot like what Star Trek did in the 1960s, where it presented things in a way of very fanciful or very sci-fi or very out there, but it was actually talking about societal issues at the time. Now, to talk about where Disney actually got their version, most people think all they did was just take the original, made it more child-friendly, and do it that way. Just release it, take away a lot of the, undertones and the explicit, maybe sexual or, violent things. And that's not actually the case. What actually happened about 15 years after Gabby died in 1766, a woman by the name of, and it's French, I'm going to destroy it, Jeanne Marie La Prince de Beaumont. We're going to call her Beaumont. So Beaumont in 1766 actually abridged Gabby's version. And when I say she abridged it, I mean she abridged it. She took it from, say, like the London Bridge and made it into one of those little 5-foot bridges you walk over in your wedding photos. Yeah, she abridged the thing. Now, a lot of what was changed, she took out pretty much everything that had to do with any fairies, the king, the dream sequences that Belle had. And what all that was in the original, the way that Belle spoke to the prince, not the beast, but the prince, was every night in her dreams. She would dream about him and talk to him. All of that got taken out in Beaumont's version. Also, the fact that she was already a princess. Yeah, so the whole notion that she is a princess because she married the prince, how Disney portrays it, is actually incorrect. She was a princess because her father was a king and her mother was a good fairy. Now, the reason she ended up living with a merchant was that the bad fairy, who, by the way, is the same person that tried to come on to the beast or the prince, and she turned him into the beast because he did not take her sexual advancements. He saw her more as a mother because she was his caretaker. That same person basically tried to kill Belle as a child. Well, the king, to keep her safe, gave her to the merchant because his daughter had died. So she took the place of the merchant's daughter. So she was already a princess. Yeah. Now, another big thing is the rose. The rose is such a symbolic thing in the Disney movie. It has everything to do with once the petals fall off, he's stuck that way forever. He was given that rose because, he's basically mean to the lady, to, the good witch or good fairy, whatever you want to call her. All of that was after the original. None of that is how it went in the original. The original story was that the merchant, after coming back or he was trying to make his way home, he basically, on a very cold, bad night or day, he stumbled upon to the palace. Now, the palace in the story is beautiful. It's like it's summer there when it's winter everywhere else. It's very beautiful. The garden is beautiful. The castle is beautiful. He goes inside. There's nobody there. Nobody greets him. It just so happens that this food just appears, and he starts eating, and there's a bed ready for him, and he just stays there. The next morning, there just happens to be food ready for a breakfast, and so the beast was being extremely hospitable, really taking care of him. And he didn't reveal himself to him, of course, but he was being a very gracious, very kind host. Now, when the man went to leave, as he's leaving, the one thing that Beauty had asked for was a rose. And he saw all these roses. So he actually went to pick a half dozen roses. When he did this, then the beast appeared and basically said, hey, I just took care of you all night. I gave you shelter, I gave you food, and you repay me by trying to steal my roses? And he was going to kill the merchant right then. And the merchant begged for his life. He told him, look, I have these 3 daughters. And by the way, in the original, there were 3 daughters, 2 evil and then Belle. So, but we'll get to the evil ones in a little bit. So anyways, the beast says, okay, well, I'll tell you what, because the merchant went into his whole story about his spiel, what happened to him, how horrible it was. He was just getting this for one of his daughters. And the beast said, I'll tell you what, instead of me killing you right now, you go home, you ask one of your daughters if they will take your place, come back here and take your place, and basically, I'll kill them instead of you. Yeah, pretty harsh, right? Now, in defense of the merchant, in his mind, he said, I can't do that, and he even asked the beast, well, what kind of trickery do you expect me to use, to lure my daughter here? And the beast said, no trickery. They have to come of their own free will, or else I'm going to kill the both of you when you show up. And so the merchant agrees. And on his way home, it's really an internal struggle for him. Should he even mention it? Should he not mention it? What should he do? And he finally decides, okay, I'll mention it. And again, this was not, the beast saying Belle has to come back. It's the beast saying one of your daughters have to come back. So when he gets there, basically the other 2 daughters are like, no way, man, I'm not doing it. And Belle, being kind-hearted, says, you know what? I caused this. I will go back. And okay, the father says, all right. So now he does say on the whole trip there, listen, if you change your mind, you can get off right now. We can stop right now. And Belle says, no, I'm going to go. So obviously that story has been completely changed in Disney, the way all of that happens. Because after that point, the rose means nothing. It was just that one little part. He's picking it for his daughter and he's taking it home to her and all that. None of that is important in the original, other than the fact that he plucked it. This whole, it's in a case and the last petal, none of it. Now, another big portion that was taken out in Beaumont's version that is, again, aligned to Disney and not the original, is the notion of fairies. Basically, there were no fairies in Beaumont's version. She basically, what she did is she took what Gabby had done and she turned it into a tale of morality for young ladies at the time, basically saying, and as you can tell in the Disney version, well, no matter what somebody's like, you need to see what they're like on the inside and all that, because husbands back then were pretty brutal, as we talked about earlier. Women didn't have any rights to choose who they wanted to marry or anything like that. So it's really her way of saying, look, no matter what you get, you have to be a lady about it. You have to be prim and proper and do the right thing and all of that. Now, there were still some other things that Disney took out of Beaumont's version. They really cut down on anything sexualized, anything really overly violent, and they actually added in Gaston. Gaston was neither in the original version or Beaumont's version or anybody's version that came after that until basically Disney. Disney added him in there to be the villain. They added him to take the place of the Beast as the villain in the movie. In the Disney version, the Beast is basically, really is basically a nice guy. He's got anger issues and, and all that. He got turned to a beast, so he's pretty angry dude, kind of a little self-centered. but he obviously comes around. He shows he's a nice guy. He's just mean and burly on the outside, but he's actually a pretty nice guy. And the original, that was not the case. In the original, he was the villain. He truly was. And really, I shouldn't say in the original and the Beaumont version. In the original, he kind of shares that with the evil fairy. They are both pretty bad, but he was raised by the evil fairy. That was it wasn't his mother, it was actually his caretaker, because his father had died and his mother was off protecting the kingdom, and she left this bad or evil fairy in charge of raising the beast, raising the prince. So all of that pretty much got taken out, anything like that. And I can't say it was for the worst. It's hard because the original is obviously the original. The story it told and the meaning behind it were very deep. They were not meant for children. They were absolutely an adult thing. Now, with Disney making that into, and even Beaumont, Beaumont was more, teenagers, like older teenagers, 15 and up kind of thing. Disney made it children. Disney made it a child's tale. And I can't really blame them for the changes they made. Because if you actually look at it, for one, it would be an insanely long story. I mean, it would have been like Lord of the Rings on, Beauty and the Beast. It just would not have worked. I mean, it would have been insanely long. So I can understand them cutting it down and cutting all of that out. I can also understand them making it more child-friendly by getting rid of the hyperviolence, hypersexuality, and getting rid of the morality tale of, women being subservient to their men no matter what. There are some things that, they probably took a little too artistic license to. Namely, the whole point about, I think they really could have left in the part in the original where she agrees to marry him before he reverts back to the prince. In the original, she basically comes to the realization that, and actually after her father talking to her and all sorts of stuff, she comes to the realization, okay, I will be subservient. I will marry the beast no matter what he looks like. And then he turns into the prince, and when she wakes up, and she doesn't see it, she goes to bed, and when she wakes up, there's this handsome prince laying in the bed next to her. So, they probably could have left that in there. I think that kind of would have been a little more special than just, he comes up off the ground and turns into this prince and all that, and then she agrees to marry him, although she does say she loves him, of course, before that last petal falls. So anyways, those are the discrepancies between the two. That's really where Disney got their version. And to sum it all up, I gotta say, I can't really blame them. Again, it was all a very complex, very deep, very socially and politically meaningful story, meaning the original. That's probably a little too deep for kids. What we ended up with was a very good story. It was a lot of fun. Gaston is obviously a lot of fun. So, really in closing, I just have to say, I think Disney did a good job, not in keeping with the original, but in making it into something that kids and everyone really would enjoy. I think Gabby's story was very, very good, very deep, very needed in her time. But I don't think it was appropriate, obviously, for children. Okay, everyone. Well, I am off to watch A Tale as Old as Time, a.k.a. Beauty and the Beast, for about the 500th time with my daughter. And as any parent can tell you, after about the 300th time of watching anything, you get very, very, very sick of it. But at least now I get to watch it with a new idea of the history behind it, where it came from, and what the differences are between then and now. And to be honest with you, I might just pull out my Harry Potterness and be like, the books were better. So honestly, I hope you all enjoyed learning the history and the differences as much as I enjoyed researching it. All right, everybody. Well, I am DONE done. See ya.
Thank you for listening to Mark Talks, so his wife doesn't have to.